I've not received any apologies myself, Chair.
Right, okay. Does anybody know whether Mike's coming? No, okay.
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any declarations of interest?
No.
No. Okay. Right, okay. Okay, then item 3 then, the minutes of the previous meeting. I don't have any comments. Does anybody else have any comments? I know Stephen wanted to say a couple of things about it, but do any members of the committee have any comments about them?
No.
No? Right, okay. Fire away, Steve, then, if you want to just
say. Yeah, it's only additional information. Really. I know we discussed at the last meeting about doing a review of the building works at Jubilee 2. Cabinet had already decided to do this a few months ago, but when it came to Cabinet on the 14th of October, there were a few things that concerned us to deal with the long-standing building defects on the Cabinet report and ongoing issues with roof leaks around the building, and initially started leaking water into the ground floor training village in 2014. So what we're going to do, we're going to widen the report, not just on current issues with the building, but also the previous ones over the last 8 years, and try to root out what this council actually done with the matter, apart from putting buckets underneath leaking roofs. That was all, Chairman. Just tell you where we're going.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I mean, yeah, at the last meeting, I think the comments that I certainly made and some of the other members made with that we really need to get this bottom now, because you know, we don't want new problems arising in the future. We really could do with sorting it out once and for all. So
no, it is, Chairman. It's something that we're well aware and we're working on for the last 2-3 months about this. So thank you for that.
All right, thanks, Steve. Okay, item number 4 then, the audited statement of accounts for 2019-20, and Andrew from Grant Thornton's going to go through these for us, I understand.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just make sure you can hear me okay?
Well, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yes, pleased to say the audit is nearing its conclusion, and we can present our audit findings report to you today. I appreciate some of you may have had a chance to read through the report, but what I'll do is just page turn and take you through the relevant key points, if that's okay. And if there are any questions, please do stop and ask me. But I will obviously take questions at the end as well. Is that okay? Yeah,
that's fine. Thank you.
Real. Okay, so if I can take to the headlines section first of all, which is on page 13 of the agenda pack. So just to confirm that our financial statements audit is nearing conclusion. There are a few final matters that we're just working with the finance team on. The biggest issue that remains ongoing is just around some issues that we've had with the valuation of the car parks. We're just working with the finance team and the council's valuer on that one. But aside from that, the audit is near enough complete. And so at this point in time, pending any emerging issues with that particular issue, I am expecting to issue an unqualified opinion upon the authority's accounts. There will be, in that audit opinion, there will be what we call an emphasis of matter paragraph. I don't believe this is anything that you need to be too concerned about, because it really is just reflecting the current environment that we're in, and the valuers who've done your valuations of land and buildings, and also the actuaries done the valuation of your pension liability, and they have included uncertainties in the valuation work because of the obviously the uncertainties in the external environment. So it is really just a reflection of that uncertainty, but it doesn't mean that the valuation that's been undertaken cannot be relied upon. And our audit opinion is just simply reflecting those uncertainties. So nothing to be concerned about. Moving across the page, we just, on page 14 of the pack, we just talk about the value for money arrangements. And I'm pleased to say, I will go into a bit more detail on this later on, but pleased to say that we're anticipating issuing an unqualified value for money conclusion on the forester's arrangement, which is obviously a good result. And then I guess just to confirm that we are not planning to exercise any of our wider statutory powers or duties, which again is obviously a good thing. Before I do get into the detail of the report, I do want to acknowledge the work of the finance team. I believe, although I wasn't around this time last year, that our report was maybe somewhat critical in terms of the financial statements, but I'm very pleased to say that my experience is that we've received a very good quality set of accounts. We've been provided with some really good quality working papers, and the finance team has been very responsive throughout the entire audit. There were some issues that we identified last year, and again, pleased to say that all of those issues have been worked upon and addressed by the finance team. So I would like to put on record my thanks and appreciation to Jan and Sarah and the rest of the finance team who've cooperated with the audit.
Good.
Moving on, if I may then, just in some of the detail of the report, if I can take you to page 16 of the pack. This just highlights the materiality that we work to. This is basically if you like, the level of error that we allow in our opinion. So we audit to a figure of just short of £1.2 million. Errors that go above that amount, we would therefore become an audit opinion issue. So that's the importance of that figure. And then just to confirm, the triviality level is 59,000, and that means that we report any errors above that amount to this audit committee in this report, which I'll be going through now. So then if I just move quickly on to page 17 of the pack, we come to the significant audit risks that we highlighted in the plan earlier in the year. Pleased to say that in terms of revenue, we've not identified any significant issues in the audit work. In addition, on the next page, we identified a significant risk around management override controls. And again, pleased to say that our work hasn't identified any issues in respect of this particular risk, which again is good news. Then just moving on to valuation of land and buildings, we have identified some issues in relation to the valuation of plant, property and equipment, and I will come to them when I get to Appendix C in detail. And we also refer to the material uncertainty that the valuer placed on their valuation here as well, and the fact that that's led to an emphasis of matter. And I will come back to the issues that we've identified later on in the report. Moving on to page 19 of the pack, the valuation of the pension fund liability. Again, we've referred to the uncertainty that the actuaries placed upon the valuation of the liability. Again, that's resulted in the emphasis of matter. We haven't found too many issues in relation to this, which is good news, but there was one issue, which again, we'll come back to when I get to Appendix C on that. Moving on to page 20 of the pack, we refer to some of the other areas of audit risk here. The two I want to mention here is first of all around the fixed asset register system. We did, as part of last year's audit, identify quite a few errors with fixed assets last year. The authority, in response to that, implemented a new fixed asset register and migrated its data to that new system. And we're pleased to say that we believe that is a positive step in the right direction, and the audit has been a lot easier to conduct this year as a result of that. So that's great news. What we have, however, identified as part of the audit this year was some additional historic errors with the brought forward values, and there's some prior period adjustments that have now been put into the accounts to correct these. And again, I'll come back to these in Appendix C. But otherwise, this is very much a positive development in the sense of that we believe that the arrangements that the authorities got in place for capital accounting are much stronger now. It's moved away from its spreadsheet-based system. In addition, this year, the authority moved its payroll processing to Stoke-on-Trent City Council, and we've looked at the arrangements in place and made sure that the transfer of payroll processing hasn't caused any issues on the accounts, and we're pleased to say we haven't identified any issues in relation to that as well. On page 21 of the pack, we just refer to the fact that we've done some work around land buildings again, and the estimates that we found. As I say, I'll come back to the individual issues, and we just at the bottom there refer to the fact that we have got some ongoing work around the valuation of some of the council's car parks. On page 22 of the pack, we talk about our work on investment property, which again is another area of evaluation work. And we had identified that a number of investment properties had not been formally revalued during the year. The CITF code does actually require these to be measured at fair value at the reporting date, so we would expect material investment properties to be revalued every single year. We've done some work to estimate the impacts on the valuation, and we've identified a small downward movement, and that's listed again in Appendix C, which I will come to later. If I can then move on to just jump to page 24 of the pack, which talks about our work around going concern. We've reviewed the management assessment of going concern disclosures that have been put into the accounts, and we've concluded that based upon the work that we've done in the review of management's assessment, we haven't identified any issues that would cast doubt on the going concern assumption, and we're happy with the disclosures that have been made in the authority's accounts. So we haven't raised any issues in relation to going concern, which is obviously positive. On page 25, we have a number of matters which we are required to communicate to you on. I'm not going to go through each of them, but just to say, in terms of the written representations, we do ask each year to get a letter of representation from the council, and that is included in the papers. This year we have above the kind of, if you like, the general representations that we request every year, there are a couple of specific representations in that letter this year on the unadjusted misstatements that I'll come to shortly, but also on the prior period adjustment that we've required due to some of the historical issues around plant, property and equipment. Moving swiftly on to page 28 and 29 of the pack, we set out our findings here of our value for money work, and we've done a lot of work around the authority's financial sustainability, particularly in light of COVID and the impact that has had on the authority. But we're happy to say that based upon the work that we've done today, that the authority has got good arrangements in place. It has managed to set albeit a deficit budget for next year, but we believe that there are sufficient reserves in place to cover that. And we know that the council has done a lot of work around identifying additional savings and has brought in an external consultant to support that, and I believe draft proposals will be presented to Cabinet next month as well. So we do believe that there are strong arrangements in place, and the council is managing the impact of COVID on the medium-term financial strategy well. As a result, we are concluding to give the authority an unqualified conclusion on VFM. But what we would say, and more just a note rather than a strong recommendation at this stage, is we do believe there is a need for the council to continue to build its reserves to kind of be more financially resilient going forward in the future, particularly to withstand the likes of COVID and other things like that. On page 30, we do need to confirm our independence to act as your auditor. We do that at various stages during the year, and we did that in the audit plan, but just to confirm that we believe that we have remained independent and we are able to give you that independent opinion upon the financial statements. Moving across the page onto page 31, we talk about some of the non-audit work that we do. We certified the council's housing benefit claim, which we do every year. And we report the fees here, but we do not believe that this particular piece of work causes any threat to our independence, and the fee is relatively low in comparison to the total audit fee. On page 32 of the pack, we have a couple of recommendations here based upon the work that we've done this year. One relates to investment properties, and we have recommended that the authority categorises any assets that are categorised as investment properties are revalued on an annual basis to comply with the CITF code, and hopefully that will avoid some of the issues that we've identified this year. And also, because of some issues we've identified around useful economic lives on PPE, we do recommend that the council reviews the useful lives to make sure that they are reflective of the actual use going forward. Page 33 of the pack refers to the recommendations that we raised last year as part of the audit. I'm pleased to say that all of these recommendations have been implemented over the last year, so good result. And in particular, the quality of working papers and the asset register, which we believe were kind of key issues last year, have been addressed. So we've seen some real improvement made by the finance team this year, which is great to see. Moving on to Appendix C, which is on page 34 of the pack. This is where we start to identify the audit adjustments that we've made during the year. We've raised 5 adjustments which management have decided to adjust the accounts for. Sorry. I don't know if that was the question. So sorry, yeah. So the adjusted misstatements net off to a £1.2 million adjustment in totality. And I'm not going to go through each of the 5 in turn, but you can see that 4 of them relate to fixed assets or investment properties, and 1 relates to pension liabilities. I say overall they net off to £1.2 million impact, and the authority has put these through and adjusted these into the revised and final set of accounts. Moving across the page onto page 36, there were a number of disclosure issues that we've identified, mostly minor in nature, nothing material here. To note that I guess the key one here is the one at the top around the prior period adjustment, but pleased to say that the authority has adjusted for all of these in the final set of accounts. Moving on to page 37 of the pack. There are some audit adjustments that we've identified which the authority has decided not to adjust in the accounts, and we do require the Audit and Standards Committee to actually sign off on the fact that these items are unadjusted. So I will just go through these in a little bit of detail. So the first one relates to the flexible use of capital receipts. We identified a number of items which we believe should have been accounted for as refcus in the code, which weren't. So we are recommending, we did recommend that as an audit adjustment, but the finance team decided that it didn't want to adjust that and provided the reason in the final column that you can see to the right hand side. We also identified, as I mentioned before, some investment property that hadn't been revalued, and we believe there was potentially a small downward impact as a result of that would have been otherwise identified by a formal valuation. Again, management hasn't decided to adjust that on the basis that it's not material, and obviously that was based upon our estimates using indices. And then the final issue that management has decided not to adjust for was around depreciation. We did identify some assets that had not been depreciated in prior years. Again, the amount was relatively low, and as a result, management decided not to adjust for that particular one. As I say, so all of these 3 have not been adjusted, and we do need the committee's approval to sign off that these have not been adjusted for. And then finally, on page 38, we just report our audit fees. The final audit fee is still to be confirmed. We will report this back to the audit committee at the next meeting, and of course it will feature in the annual audit letter, which is the public facing document. I will be discussing a further variation to the planned audit fee, and the reason for this is largely due to COVID, which has led to additional audit work which I've set out on this page. But in summary, we've had to revise some of our risk assessment and materiality levels in respect to COVID. There's been more uncertainty around a number of the estimates, particularly around property and pensions and investment valuations, which has led to additional work. And then we've also had to do some additional work around VFM and going concern as a result of COVID as well. But perhaps the biggest impact of all has actually been remote working. Whilst we have worked very well with the authority to do the audit remotely, it has unfortunately led to more time going into the audit than before. We are trying to absorb as much of this cost as possible, and of course we have had some savings in the sense that we've not had to travel and incur travel costs, but relatively speaking they are quite small in scale, those savings. So we will be taking the share of the hit on this, but we are asking authorities like yourselves to share some of that pain. I appreciate obviously the council's finances are somewhat constrained and have been badly impacted by COVID too. So we will do our best to minimise that additional fee, and I will be discussing that with the Director of Finance before reporting back to yourselves at the next meeting. I think that brings me to the end of the report, so happy just to take any questions you've got on the report.
Thank you, Andrew. That's very informative. Members, if members have got any questions, if you could put your hand up on the screen, basically, and then I'll try and go round everybody if people have got questions. I'm not able to see everybody simultaneously, so if you use the hand that's provided through the software, then I should be able to pick everybody up. Yep, Sarah.
Hi, I'm just going back to one of your earlier points. You mentioned that we had a bit of negativity last year. That was really around the extra costs rather than anything else. And I'm really pleased to see that the working papers have improved and the valuations have improved. So really well done, Sarah. I think you've done a fantastic job here. Can you just explain what I know what REFCUS is, but I don't know whether other members may know. And obviously, if we've got to actually agree to these audit adjustments that are not going to be made to the accounts, then I think we perhaps need a bit of an explanation of that, Andrew, if that's okay.
Yes, that's basically REFCUS in long terms means revenue expenditure that's been funded by capital, so which is something that the authority is able to do by law. So we believe that rather than treating this in the way that the authority did, that this should have been treated as REFCUS. But as I say, it's a relatively minor issue in the grand scheme of things, and I think we've picked it up this year for the first time just purely as a result of the sample testing that we did. It just happened to pick up an item of expenditure, a particular project where it should have been treated as REFCUS this year.
Does that answer your question, Sarah?
To a degree. What are you able to say? What item of expenditure it was, or do we not need to get into that?
I've not got the detail in front of me. I can't remember the specific project. I don't know if Sarah knows from the top of her head.
So what we've sort of used the flexible use of capital receipts for in the past sort of couple of years has predominantly been like the new, or part of it's been to do with the new waste service, so the new waste and recycling service. So last year we did use a portion of the flexible use of capital receipts to fund that new service coming in. You understand, we bought a lot of new kit and everything. We had a lot of staff time that went to that project, and that project has enabled us to make efficiencies and savings moving forward. So that's what we have mainly used the receipts for, if that helps at all.
So it's more staff time than actual equipment or anything else you've just allocated, like the recharges to it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, part of it is, yeah. Some of it is to cover sort of like the staff and the project time. A chunk of that is, to be honest, and then there is some that's been allocated towards the purchase of like the bins and things like that. So, but
not major capital items.
Sorry,
not major capital items then.
No, the smaller sort of like the leaflet, the issuing of the leaflets and things like that, all to do like the new service, not like the traditional sort of capital items where we would have just capitalised them anyway. So,
okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? No. Well, in that case, then obviously we need to actually agree or not agree to this. Does anybody have any problem with us actually agreeing to these revisions not being put through the accounts?
Can I say something, Chair, please?
Go on. Yeah.
No, I'd like to thank all the finance team really for this, what seems to be an excellent set of accounts, and thank Grant Thornton for the hard work and how the two bodies have worked together really well to achieve this. That was all, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. What I'm proposing is if any of the members believe that we shouldn't put these, believe that we should put the adjustments through the accounts rather than not amending the accounts for them. If you put your hand up, I've got Mike. If anybody else puts hands up, and then if there's a majority of members who believe that the account should be adjusted, then we'll have to look at that. At the moment, I've just got one person who wants to, who doesn't. Yeah, we've just got one person who would like the accounts to be adjusted. So it's fair to say then that the committee's happy with the treatment by the finance team. So we just need that to be minuted that the committee was happy to leave the accounts as they were. Then the other aspect that we've got in relation to this is that subject to any minor adjustments, the accounts are going to need to be signed off by myself and Jan. We've got two choices. We can either convene another meeting to look at them again, or alternatively, we can give myself and Jan the authority to sign the accounts off. So if anybody's got any objection to us doing that, it's what we did last year. If people have got objections to us actually doing that, if you would put your hand up now, and then obviously I can see how many people we've got, if there is anybody who does actually object to it. Thank you. Now I'm seeing no objections then. So if Denise, if you could just minute that the committee has agreed that we subsequently sign off the accounts. Obviously, if anything major was to come to light, I'll make sure it comes back to the committee.
Chair, I absolutely agree with what you just said. Can
Yeah.
I ask Denise the minutes that I abstained by name, please? I don't want it just to
Sure.
be. Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Right. Just going back to Andrew, is there anything you want to say about the audit changes on the other report that we have?
So, sorry, which were you referring to? Sorry.
We've got two reports. We've got the, sorry, it's all right. It's okay. We've gone through the audit changes. It's all right. On my screen, I've got two separate reports here, but we've actually been through them both. Sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah. So thank you for that. And obviously, as other people said, an excellent piece of work by the finance team. We've really made strides this year, and I think you can all be proud of yourselves and keep up the good work and do the same next year. Right, moving on then. Item number 5 on the agenda then, the Q2 Corporate Risk Management Report, and Jan's going to go through that for us.
Thank you, Chair. I just need to remember to unmute myself and turn on my camera. So what you have in front of you is the Q2 Corporate Risk Report. The report confirms that there are no outstanding risk reviews. There have been some increases in risk levels, and those are detailed in the appendices. Most of those related to COVID and just reflecting the current environment. There are no new identified risks, and we have included in the report at Appendix B the current position on Brexit, no trade deal risk. This is work which is being coordinated across all of the Staffordshire authorities. So just by way of explanation, in case you may have been confused by some of the items in Appendix B, not all of these will relate to Newcastle. So, for example, one of the risks is around agriculture. You know, we don't have a massive farming community in Newcastle. We have some, but it's not a major issue for Newcastle. But obviously, across the whole Staffordshire area, it is a major concern for more rural districts and the county, who have a large portfolio of farms. So that work is continuing. We are feeding into that work through the Local Resilience Forum, and as further information emerges, we are continually updating that risk and all the appropriate actions. What I can say at this stage is that the key risk that we've identified for Newcastle is around supply chain resilience. If there is a no trade deal scenario and we experience disruption to our supply chain, then we need to be in a position to manage that. So that is the key risk that we are focusing on locally, and I'd be very happy to take any comments or questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Jan. Do we have any questions for Jan? I'm not seeing any hands. Jan, I assume that we don't actually have any questions on that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
So thanks very much. Okay, moving on then. Item number 6 then on the agenda is the internal audit update for Q2, and Claire's going to give us a run through on that, if she wouldn't mind.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Chair. So this is the Q2 update of internal audit activity. So this covers the period from July to September of this year. So on page 141, so at the bottom of that page, on paragraph 2.1, we have commenced some audit work, which is hopefully pleasing because we went in that position at Q1, but we haven't actually completed any reviews yet. So due to the ongoing impact of the pandemic, but we have got some audits underway. So at page 142 of the report pack, you'll see a table 1 there, which lists the audits that we've got in progress. And these are the audits that, from a risk assessment point of view, we felt that it was important to get underway for various reasons. Obviously, ones you'll be able to link to COVID around things like health and safety, business continuity, IT governance. You know, that they are key risk areas at the minute, so due mainly to the pandemic. So that's why we've got those underway, as well as some other risk areas that we identified. So say, at the minute, those audits are still in progress, and I'm hopeful that for Q3 we'll be able to report the outcomes of those audits to the committee. So further down the page then, we continue to track recommendations, which, you know, is an important part of the work that we do to make sure that recommendations, you know, are being implemented. You know, that's where we get the value out of our internal audit work, when recommendations are actually implemented and improvements are made. So it's pleasing to report that performance is improving there. So we have 225 recommendations now implemented, which is an 88% success rate. So that's really positive. Appendix A, which is on page 142, gives you the breakdown there by service area, if that's of interest to the committee. Also, just to say, we will be keeping the plan under review. I think we did say at Q1 there was some audits that we did, you know, agree with the committee that, you know, we wouldn't do this year just because of, say, the pandemic and the current situation. We're obviously keeping that under review, and at Q3 I'll bring a further review back to committee of, you know, the plan for the remaining quarter of the year and what we're aiming to get completed. So I'll do that for Q3. So I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire. Do we have any questions for Claire? No, you've got no questions, Claire. So thank you very much. And
great, thank you.
We'll move on to item number 7, the Treasury Management half-yearly report for 2021. And Sarah's going to go through that for us.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Treasury Management half-yearly report for 2021. The Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy Code of Practice on Treasury Management recommends that we do sort of inform members twice a year on the Treasury Management activities that the authorities taking place. During the first 6 months of the year, the council has had funds available for investment of up to 25 million. And this has been due to the government grants issued in respect of COVID-19. As at the 30th of September 2020, the council held investments of 7 million. 5 million of that was held within the debt management account, 1 million in the public sector deposit fund, and then £1 million in the council's current account. The investment portfolio yield for the first 6 months of the year stands at 0.13%. That's compared to the council's budgeted investment return of 0. The amount of interest earned for the first 6 months of the year is £8,400. In respect of the Heritable Bank, we have received a further and final payment, should I say, that was in July 2020, and that was of £23,919. This takes the final amount of the investment return up to 2.492 million against the original 2.5 million invested. And at present, the council currently has no borrowings at the moment. So, happy to take any questions or comments if anybody's got any.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Do we have any questions on the Treasury Management Report? Mike?
Just very quick, Chair, thank you. I mean, I shall be very happy to tell Alderman John Taylor that he can put his Iceland bag away once and for all, that he carried around for several years just to prove a point. But that said, it's really good to see that basically, by the look of it, we've recovered pretty much 99.9% of the amounts outstanding. So thank you to Sarah, and please pass on my thanks to the team that were actually doing that centrally, because I think it's a good result for all councils, really. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think it's one of those rare occasions where people get the money back, and we don't hear about that very often, do we? So yeah, I can't see anybody else who's looking to ask any questions. So thank you very much, Sarah. And we'll...
Just a minute, Chair.
Sorry, I can't see your hand, Barry.
Well, I'm waving it furiously.
No, you have to put it up on the screen. I can't.
I haven't got a button on the bottom here to do it.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, you say there's no borrowings at present. Do you not? You don't anticipate any in the near future, I take it?
In respect of borrowings, we did a review of the capital programme earlier in the year. Obviously, when COVID kicked in, we had to sort of revisit our capital projects for this year, and we did scale those down. Obviously, now we're in the second lockdown, and works are perhaps going to be slowing up a little bit on some of our projects. So, depending on sort of how the rest of the year pans out, we will need to borrow for our capital programme, and it just sort of it's going to depend on what happens with COVID, really, and whether we need to sort of borrow towards the end of this year, or whether we will be able to push it into the next financial year.
Okay, thank you for that. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Claire. I'm not seeing anybody else's hand, so I'm assuming that we're all okay with that. So yeah, thanks very much, Claire. And we'll move on now to the Health and Safety 6-monthly report, and I believe Nesta's in the background somewhere waiting to enlighten us on this.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this report is to update members on the main health and safety issues and trends during the first 6 months of this financial year. So what I'll do is I'll go through the main points from the report. Most probably starting at section 2, which is on page 163. This section covers policy. And during the first 6 months, we've updated the Employees' Health and Safety Handbook, and also the workplace policy on smoking has been updated. However, I would say that we were also due to commence work on the lone working policy, but that has been delayed, and that's principally due to our work associated with COVID. Section 5 of the report on page 164, updates on accident data and trends. You'll see that there was a total of 29 incidents. That's significant to the activities over the first 6 months. Sorry, the screen went blank, so I'm hoping that you can still hear me.
I can hear you again now. We lost you for a few seconds.
So the internet connection seems a bit poor today, so I'm sorry about that. In terms of those incidents, 3 of those were riddle reportable, and further details of those are given in table 5.2. Sections 7, 8 and 9 of the report detail the health and safety meetings that have continued during the COVID pandemic, and also details all the topics that have been covered at those meetings. I've mentioned COVID quite a lot throughout this report, and that has been the service's priority within these last 6 months. As you can imagine, the workload has been constantly evolving, changing, and a whole new area of work. So we've been undertaking risk assessments for our work, person-specific risk assessments. We've been implementing new policies, procedures and controls, and ensuring services are COVID secure for both customers and staff. So that really has been the priority. And hopefully that gives you a flavour in terms of the highlights of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nesta. Hands up, anybody who would like to ask a question? Mike?
I mean, it can't be fixed, Chair. The Castle House section, obviously, I know as the report reads, Castle House is sparsely populated at the moment, but Nesta, as soon as you possibly can you update us on the 2, the blind and the what's it called, the extractor? So 2 of the things that were pointed out in the major report before, as soon as we know if they've been successful, can you let us know, please?
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that outside of the meeting, or I'll cover it in the next report. I think none of us knows what's going to happen in terms of the full occupation of the building for us to enable us to fully consider that, but yes, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think if we could have something in the report next time, Nesta, then we can all get an opportunity to discuss it at the meeting. That's okay. Do we have any other questions on this report? Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think the blinds have all been done. It's just there's nobody in the building now to say they're working or not. But I think the actual work's actually been done, hasn't it, Nesta? Am I wrong in that?
The blinds throughout all the office areas have been completed. The one we've started some trial blinds within the customer service or the library area of the building, and that's the area where we need some further occupation to determine how successful that they've been. But there are some trialed in there. But certainly the remainder of the building, yes, all those blinds are in, and the feedback is that they have been successful in alleviating some of those matters.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, yeah, well, but obviously we could still do with something next time if you wouldn't mind. Obviously, you may have had more opportunity then to try them out and just see that they are working as intended, if that's all right, Nessa.
Yes, absolutely, Chair. Happy to include that in the next report.
Thank you. Anybody else with any questions? No? Right. Thanks very much, Nesta. Item number 9 then, back on track, the coronavirus pandemic recovery plan update. We've asked Stephen to give us an update on this, being something that went to Cabinet, and obviously as a member of the Cabinet, he's one of the best placed people to explain it to us. So would you like to just give us a few words on that, please, Steve?
Yeah, I will do, Paul. This is a standard form, although obviously at the moment it's changed somewhat. The first couple of changes, there's a, if I just go through the thing and bring it down, come on, Steve, sort it out. There is a county-wide local outbreak board which the leader sits on, which is basically all the sort of heads of everything around the whole of the county. He sits on that, and underneath that is a multi-agency board, which I chair that, which is talking to people like Aspire, the university, the sixth form, the police, and trying to bring everything together. And there's good engagement, and that's working quite well. Go down the page a bit more. Reopening safe, successful retail centres. Well, this is a bit out of date now, isn't it? Because we're going into reverse, which is a crying shame, because our markets were doing really, really well, and we've got 4 good events planned in November, all of which have been cancelled. Go down a bit more. We've had £125,000 for homeless, and a further tranche for emergency COVID funding of £408,000. Now that is after this report, so it's not in this report. There's another £408,000 coming. We started paying support payments to people on low incomes, advised to self-isolate. Numbers of people applying are low to date. Following the announcement of another national lockdown, which has closed J2 and the museum, we'll be updating our income forecast again. It's like the forecast overspend for this financial year will increase. This will be reported December cabinet. So obviously it's a movable feast, all this is. Everything's changing from day to day, really, isn't it? But I think we're handling it quite well personally. But I suppose I would say that. We've had the money for the high streets in the town deal rather in Newcastle. We've had £1 million for that. We've had £750,000 for Kidsgrove, and that's well on the way to going along. We've also had the bid in for the Future High Streets Fund, which again is carrying on, because at the end of the day, council work carries on. It doesn't just stop. The rest of the stuff on this report is more or less the same as it was. The only real difference is extra £408,000 we've had, which was very, very well. And that's about it. And I'll take any questions when you got any. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Does anybody have any questions on the report? For this, we're feeding back any comments to Cabinet. So if anybody's got any comments to Cabinet, then now's your chance. I'm not seeing anything. Is anybody waving at me? If you are, shout. No? Okay, right. Well, thanks very much, Steve. We've got nothing to feed back on that as things stand. So thanks for the explanations on it. Item number 10 then, the committee work plan. Does anybody have any comments in relation to the forthcoming meetings and or anything that they think should be added in that hasn't presently been included? No? Right, well, oh, sorry, go on, Mike.
I mean, to be honest, Paul, it's a movable feast. I think I wouldn't like to say that we definitely should be looking at the Brexit because we don't know what's going to happen yet. But can it be something that we bear in mind, that something that we take a little bit of a closer look at if there's a no deal Brexit, because I think it will have a major impact on the council. But I wouldn't like to put it on and then find out that we've got a deal in the next. Yeah. So it's just something the committee bears in mind. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Denise, if you'd perhaps note that if there is a no deal Brexit, could the committee have an update on how it's affected? As obviously this won't be until February, and it'll still be early days. But if we could have some feedback on how the council's been affected by any potential no deal Brexit. Lovely, that's great. Thank you very much. I've not been informed of any urgent business, so unless anybody's got anything else, I'd like to just thank you all for your attendance again, and thank all the officers and staff for all the reports as usual, and wish you all a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.